What do you know about like Russia and China using social media as a weapon to sort of like seed discussions and tear people apart and kind of create this dissent online? And
so it's interesting that you bring that up because I would say that it's not new, right? With the invention of social media, it feels like it's new, but foreign adversaries trying to influence and drive dissent against their targets that's age old. The Brits were doing that against the colonialists back when we were still, pre-American Revolutionary War, right? That's a very common influence campaign. It's what we call it in intel terms. It's a covert influence campaign. The fact that now we have tools, now we have platforms that are digital platforms like Twitter or Parler or Instagram or Facebook, just because those are the current forms of mass media, doesn't change who's playing or how they're playing or what tools they're using. They all it's all the same, right? So is China and Russia messing with Americans through covert operations to influence through social media? Absolutely. But so are dozens of other countries that you're not even considering, right? The Saudis are doing it. The Israelis are doing it. The French are doing it. The Brazilians are doing it. The Mexicans are doing it, just like we're doing it in thousands of countries too.
We do it to them.
Of course we are, because that is intel, right? That's how intelligence works. That's how covert influence works. You're trying to influence the outcomes around the world that benefit your national security. So does that mean that we're driving dissent? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it just means that we're trying to like coax or encourage or lift up some message or some candidate that we want to see succeed in some foreign country, just like foreign countries are lifting up candidates and messages that they want to see succeed in our country. That is the game. That is intelligence, right? When Twitter and Facebook and social media evolves into the next great iteration of whatever it might be, whether it's whatever VR or augmented reality or whether we have chips in our brains because Elon Musk plugs us all in, who knows? There will be something new that will become the new platform for traditional covert influence operations. Before social media, it was newspapers and flyers and pamphlets and magazines, right? Before print media, it was word of mouth and stories and people traveling and, drawings and pictures. The ancient courts in Egypt, right? The courts of pharaohs would play this game too, where they would try to influence each other's courtesans and each other's heads of state so that the right relationships or the right trade agreements would be reached early. It's an age-old game. Influence is an age-old game. It's just played with different tools.
That's so crazy. It's so. But I don't understand. Like, what would be their goal to just drive, like, outrage within the American people? Like, there doesn't seem like a clear, defined path to where this goes.
Yeah. So that's this is where we start getting into this, like, the science and strategy of intel. And people don't think that way. Instead, you've got people who are just kind of following the narrative of whatever media source they listen to, whether they listen to conservative news or liberal news, and they just parrot whatever that media source is. In covert influence operations, there's only two objectives. There's either a specific outcome that they're looking for, or there's a chaotic outcome that they're looking for, right? That's it. It's either a specific outcome or a chaotic outcome.
Okay.
In a specific outcome, it's very, very difficult to get a specific outcome because when you're creating influence, when you're basically using ads on Twitter and Facebook to reach people, it's hard to know how those people in mass are going to actually respond, right? Are they actually going to vote for the candidate you want them to vote for? Is the whole thing going to blow up in your face somehow? Are they actually going to believe the message that's out there? Who knows? So specific outcomes are very rare. An example of a specific outcome is when the CIA went into Iran in 1949, 52 to basically unseat the current governor or the leader, and then put the Shah in place. That was a specific influence outcome they were trying to shape.
Where's the word for that? Where they get people to go in there and incite riots? Provocateurs, provocateurs. Yeah,
that is another popular pop culture term.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so like that's a specific outcome. Those are super hard, and then it didn't work, right? Like the Shah was there, and then the Shah got kicked out. There was a whole Iranian revolution. and history has written itself. Specific outcomes are not really the bee's knees anymore. Nobody's trying to make that happen. Instead, they want chaotic outcomes. Chaotic outcomes are the key to all covert influence operations in modern day. What you see Russia, what you see China doing, what you see North Korea doing, what you see Iran doing, what you see everybody doing who's messing with our social media, all they want to do is feed the flames that already exist. Feed both sides equally and just cause chaos. Because the more chaos that ensues, the more people question the fundamental values that make us Americans. How does a democracy survive when there's so much anger and hate? How many conspiracy theories have crept up because people just don't have answers to why people are doing what they're doing, right? Democrats, we just had a whole coronavirus relief bill that got passed, and I have yet to hear about it being bipartisan. I have yet to hear of a single Republican congressman or senator who participated in voting yes, right? It was pushed through on the Democratic side. The same thing happened with our healthcare reform under Obama, pushed through by a Democrat-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled Congress. When that happens, half the country gets pissed off. They're like, this isn't democracy. Half of us don't want this to happen, but because a few people hold a few seats right now at this point in time, it happens. Well, then what happens as soon as the Senate and the House become Republican-controlled? The exact same thing happens again, but in the opposite direction, right? All of a sudden, these very conservative programs get passed. And again, half the country is furious because they're like, this isn't democracy. How does this happen? That is all our adversaries are looking for. They would rather put money into existing messages, existing hate messages, existing fear messages, existing messages about women, existing messages about minorities, existing messages about immigration, about gun laws, about everything. They would rather feed that world because it's easy for them to just cause more chaos and let us question democracy. Let us undermine ourselves from within. That's the chaotic outcome. It's a much easier outcome than a specific outcome, because the more a country like us goes into chaos, the more a country like China or like Russia, in comparison to us, looks strong.
Right.
They look powerful. They gain international influence. That's the whole magic behind covert influence that nobody seems to understand or talk about or even want to accept. No one was trying to make Trump win. No one was trying to make Biden win. All they wanted to do was make Americans hate Americans and doubt our own process to elect a president. And I would say that they've been fairly successful.
Working. Where does it go from here?
We either grow up and we start to learn from conversations like this. We start to recognize that we are our own worst enemy, and that basically our enemies are they're just enabling us to keep rotting ourselves from within. So we either grow up and recognize that that's the way it works, or somehow we find a way to mature so that we are bigger and better than the messages that we all fall behind, right? So it's kind of like, it's like high school. I compare everything to high school because I feel like high school, we were talking earlier about when children develop. High school is kind of when you start really practicing the skills, the life skills that you have.
Right.
It's when you start testing the foundation that you've been programmed to believe is in high school. And then everything after that is basically just the next iteration of high school. College is just high school without parents, right? And then your day job is just high school with money. So yeah. It goes on and on. But yeah, so my point being that eventually you just have to grow out of feeling like there's bullies and feeling like things are unfair in order to get past high school, right? You can't keep hating the football quarterback for getting the pretty girl in the cheerleading squad forever. You have to grow past that eventually. Someday we're just going to have to grow past the fact that politics are petty and that we have no power. The truth is we have all the power in the world to take petty politicians out of their seats and put new politicians in their place. We're just not mature enough yet to want to admit that.
Do we have the power to do that, though?
Oh yeah.
Or do the billion-dollar corporations have the power to do that more than the people?
Why do we think the billion-dollar corporations have the power?
Lobbyists?
And what do the lobbyists do?
Pass laws that benefit their companies?
I mean, yes, but that doesn't impact voters, right? That impacts
Right.
the companies. The voters are the ones who decide who actually gets elected. So what actually influences the voters?
Media.
Media messages
Right.
about the candidates, right?
Okay.
So your billion-dollar corporations are what fund the campaigns that shape the messages that we get about the candidates themselves,
Mhm.
right? Those lobbyists and those billion-dollar companies shape the people who get elected into an office, and then once those people are in office, it's in their best interest to change laws, to gerrymander and whatever else,
Right.
to control laws and make voting easier,
Mhm.
make voting harder,
Mhm.
right? That's what they do. Everybody does it. Just like you see the grand old party right now trying to make it difficult to vote. For the last like 2 years of the election in 2020, you saw the Democratic Party trying to make it easier to vote.
Right.
And that's just the big voting thing back and forth.
Mhm.
Who are they trying to make it easier to vote for? People who lean Democratic. Who are they trying to make it harder to vote for now? People who lean Democratic. Everybody wants to support their own side.
Mhm.
We do this to ourselves because it's just another version of a popularity contest. It's high school. It's the high school race for, who's going to be president of the class.
Right.
It's all high school politics. The rest of the world doesn't need to. They don't need to mess that up. They just need to put more money and more conflicting messages out there and let us keep messing with ourselves.
Just pour gas on the fire and
Pour
let it
gas
watch
on-
it burn.
Exactly. That's exactly what they need to do. And in a country like ours, where everybody has rights, everybody has the right to vote, everything's transparent, we have a healthy culture that doubts the government. Most places in the world, if you doubt the government, you're going to jail. You'll get disappeared off the street,
Mhm.
right? Here we have a healthy, vibrant culture where we're allowed to dissent if we choose. So it's super easy for the rest of the world to mess with us. You pour gasoline on that,